Hello all. I'm just going to run people interested in an example of how to value an interest rate swap using a bond methodology. So there are two ways we can value an IRS, and this is particularly relevant for people pursuing FRM. There are two ways to value an IRS. One is using a bond method and the other is using a forward rate method. I'm going to run you through an example from Bionic Turtle as to how we can value an interest rate swap. So if you would be interested in knowing the basics of an IRS, do let me know, and I can post a video of showing people of what is an IRS and the basics of an IRS. So for this, the understanding is that people do have some knowledge on what is the function, how does an IRS function. I'm just going to run you through an example of how to value an IRS. So in terms of when we are valuing an IRS through in terms of a bond methodology, just remember the fact that an IRS, when we are talking of plain vanilla interest rate swap, there is a fixed rate leg and there is a floating rate leg. So when we are trying to value it, we are going to value it as a bond. So what we are going to do is we are going to treat the fixed rate leg as a fixed rate bond of an IRS, and we are going to treat the floating rate as a floating rate bond. So we are going to break up the problem into two parts. We are going to break it up as a fixed rate bond, and we are going to break it up as a floating rate bond. And we are basically the first and foremost thing is to how do I value a fixed rate bond and how do I value a floating rate bond. The value of an IRS then would be the value of the fixed rate bond minus the value of a floating rate bond. So that's essentially what an IRS is. Now, whether the value is positive to you or negative to you, it depends upon whether you're receiving the fixed rate component or you're paying the fixed rate component, right? So without further ado, I think it would be best to dive in terms of an example. And I'm going to, as I had already mentioned, the example that I'm going to be talking about is an example from Bionic Turtle. So there's this, and this is mainly for people pursuing FRM level 1. So there's a question which says that a bank agrees to pay a 6-month LIBOR and receive 4% annum with semi-annual compounding on a notional principal of 60 million in a vanilla interest rate swap. So the party has decided that it is going to pay LIBOR, which is the floating rate component, and it is going to be receiving 4%, which is a fixed rate component. So we are paying floating and we are receiving a fixed rate. And the entire notional principal on this amount is 60 million. So the bet, if you might say so, is on a principal of 60 million. The swap has a remaining life of 9 months. That is, a payment is due in 3 months and a final payment is in 9 months. So this is where it becomes interesting. So it says that the swap has a remaining life of 9 months and that a payment is due in a 3 months time and a final payment is in 9 months time. All right. So how I always visualize IRS is I always try to draw a timeline. I always try to represent the IRS in terms of timeline. And that is actually a rule of thumb that I apply whenever I'm dealing with anything which has a cash flow component and you have to take a present value component. So if you see, we can say that there's a timeline, and this is the timeline that I have drawn. So basically, there is an IRS which there is a remaining life of 9 months, that a payment is due in 3 months time and a payment is due in final 9 months time. So this is a timeline drawn in terms of months. So month 0, month 3, month 6, month 12, or else I can also denote it as 3 divided by 12.25, 0.5. I'm just converting them because it's easier to work with these numbers because this is what we are going to be using. So the IRS, basically we are at some point over here. Okay, we are at period 0.25. The next payment is going to happen 3 months from now. So another 0.25. So it's going to happen in another 0.25 months or in 6-month period. And the next period is going to happen in a year in 0.75 or 9 months time. So how do I get 0.75? So 9 divided by 12 and so on and so forth. So I have an IRS which is going to make me a payment some point at this period and some point at this period. So this is where I'm going to receive the payment. Let me color that blue. Okay. But what I am trying to do is I'm trying to value the IRS over here. Okay. So basically, what is the present value of the IRS in terms of period 0.25? Because I'm going to receive cash flows in period 0.5 and period 1. Okay. So let's reading ahead. The swap has a remaining life of 9 months. That is, a payment is due in 3 months' time and a final payment is due in 9 months. The 6-month LIBOR at the last payment date was 3.4% with semi-annual compounding. Okay, so, and I think all of us would be aware, again, if you are interested as to how the basics of an IRS works, do let me know, I can run you that. So the assumption here is that people do have a basic understanding of an IRS. The 6-month LIBOR at the last payment date was 3.4% with semi-annual compounding. Okay, so going back to the problem, period 0, during period 0, the market interest rate for this 6-month period, you can see it in terms of the arrow, the market interest rate, the LIBOR rate between period 0 and period 0.5, okay, was 3.4%. So the payment that I am going to get for the floating rate bond in period in 6 months time or 0.5 period, it's basically going to be based off an interest rate of 3.4%. I already know the fixed rate. The fixed rate is going to be 4%. So basically for the fixed rate, I would be receiving, if I had to show you in terms of an arrow, let me put down an arrow. So the fixed rate bond would basically be paying me 4% for this period. Okay. And it would also be paying me 4% for the another period. And then another 4% for between period 5 and period 1. Okay. So the fixed rate, we definitely know the cash flows, right? We definitely knows that in 6 months time, I'm going to get 4% rate. In another 6 months time, I get 4% rate. But with floating rate, we only know one coupon payment. We only know the coupon payment that I am going to receive at period 0.5, which is based off the market interest rate that was prevailing during time period 0. We don't know what is this interest rate going to be. Okay, so that is the common thing with all floating rate bonds, because at this point, again, the interest rate for this period will become the market interest rate. So this rate is not known. Okay, so how do we deal with this? Yeah, so again, let's keep on reading. The LIBOR rates with continuous compounding for 3 months and 9 months maturities are 3% and 3.8% respectively. So the discount rate or the market interest rate for a 3 months time. So again, remember, we are valuing at period 0.25. So the market interest rate between 0.25 and 0.5 is 3%. And the market interest rate between 0.25 and period 1 is 3.8%. Okay, so it over here says that the LIBOR rates with compounding for a 3-month and a 9-month maturities are 3% and 3.8% respectively. So this period interest rate is 3%, which is 3 months, 0.5 minus 0.25, it's 3 months. And the 9-month rate is 3.8%, which is 1 minus 0.25, right? So we have, and these rates are actually important because this is actually the rates that we are going to use to discount the cash flows. So now moving ahead, So this is, I might say, these are going to be my discount rates. Okay. This is going to be my discount rate for a 3-month cash flow. Let me write it down. Discount rate for 3-month cash flow. And this is going to be my discount rate for 9-month cash flow. Okay. So now the first thing first, we should write out what are all the cash flows that we have. Okay. What are all the cash flows that we do? So what we are going to do is we are first going to value the fixed rate bond and we are going to value the floating rate bond. So for a fixed rate bond, the first cash flow is going to be, again, the question says it's semi-annual compounding. The question over here, it says semi-annual compounding. Okay, so 4% for the entire year, 2% for half a year. So how do I get this number? So the way, okay, so how do I get the cash flows? So this is basically a byproduct of my notional is 60 million times half of 4%, which gives me around 1.2 billion. And that is what I have. So the first interest component that I'm going to get, if it were a fixed rate bond, is 1.2 million. In 1 year's time, I'm going to get back, okay, in 1 year's time, I'm going to get back the interest of 1.2 million, plus I'm also going to receive the principal. Okay. So now that we know the cash flows, I know that I'm going to receive this cash flow in 0.25 period from now, because again, remember, we are valuing the IRS over here, not here. So I'm going to receive the cash flow initially at 0.5, but I have already passed that 0.25 stage. So the time left is basically 0.5 minus 2.25, and the other one is 1 minus 0.25. So this is the period in which left remaining when I'm going to actually receive the cash. My discount rates, as was already discussed, discount rate for the 3-month cash flow is 0.25, discount rate for the 3-month cash flow is 3%, discount rate for the 9-month cash flow is 3.8%. What I do is I just convert this rates into sort of a discount factor. So the basic expression is, if I do what I'm doing is exponential minus R, which is your discount rate, times time remaining or your time left. So the discount rate is basically a component of your 3% times 0.25. So you get a discount rate of 0.99. And the other one is 3.8% times 0.75, and you get a discount rate of 0.97. And then simply, I just multiply the known cash flows with the discount rate in both the cases, and the sum total of this is 60.67 million. So the present value of these cash flow of 62.4 million at time period 0.5 is 60.67. So right now we have just valued the fixed rate bond. Now for a floating rate bond, we have to value the floating rate bond. Now for a floating rate bond, we don't know the interest rate that is going to be between period 0.5 and 0.1. We only know the interest rate that is between 0 and period 0 and 0.5, which is 3.4%. Now think of it. So we only know one interest rate. So I am just assume, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that I'm going to receive 3.4% of 60 million. And again, 3.4% is an annual rate. We are doing semi-annual compounding, so 3.4% by 2. So we are going to get 60 million, plus we are also going to get back the principal of 60 million. So the sum total of all of them comes to 61.02 million. Okay. Now the time left, again, this cash flow is going to happen in 0.25. The discount rate, as the same in case of here, for the 3-month cash flow is 3%. We convert that into a discount factor. Sorry, this is not a discount rate, but this is a discount factor. Let me relabel. Okay, so in that case, I just take the present value of the future cash flow. This comes to be 60.54 million. So the present value of the fixed rate side is 60.67 million. The present value of the floating rate side is 60.54 million. Okay, so the value of the cash flow is simply the value of the present value of the fixed rate bond minus the present value of the floating rate bond. Now, this is a positive value. The reason is we are going to be receiving a fixed and we are going to be paying LIBOR. So receiving fixed and paying floating. So obviously the receive leg is worth more than the floating rate. So the net present value comes to be 107K or 107.4K. And that is what, if I may say so, that is what the answer is. Let's see, that's answer C. So the solution to this problem is answer C. If you have any problems related to IRS, put it in the comment section. I can solve it, and do let me know if you want to have a complete rundown of how an IRS functions. Thank you.